Hello, my name is Evgeny. I'm an English language teacher.
Hello, my name is Alex and I was born in Russia and therefore I went to Russian school. But then I did my A-levels in a British school and now I'm a student in University College London. Therefore, I'm able to compare two educational systems. Our presentation is arranged along the following lines. First, we begin with a little bit of history and show you how Russian educational system developed throughout the centuries. Then, we divert our attention to its present state and dwell upon its structure, current tendencies. Then, we talk about how our system migrates to a modernized degree structure, in line with the Bologna Process model. At the very end of the video, we share our personal experiences. So, let's start!
Speaking about the origins of education in Russia, it's impossible not to mention two very important figures who carry the title Teachers of the Slavs, and I mean our dear saints, Cyril and Methodius, two brothers from Thessalonica. They were great philologists. Saint Cyril was a God-given polyglot and knew at least 6 languages. He was one of the most educated men of the time. His brother Methodius was a great administrator. Together they managed to create the Slavonic alphabet and literary language. They also translated Holy Scripture into Slavonic and laid the basis for both Slavonic divine services and literature. Moreover, they were able to leave an entire generation of disciples behind them, which made it possible for their mission to have such great results, so that it rendered a solid basis for Russian culture as a whole. In 988, partly Christianized Slavs were officially baptized by Knyaz Vladimir, and from that on they started to build schools affiliated to churches, monasteries, and during the reign of Yaroslav the Wise there already was a wide network of such religious schools that became very important centers of ancient Russian culture. Unfortunately, this blessed time didn't last long. It was interrupted by the Mongol invasion, during which numerous lands and cities were ravaged and many schools ceased to exist. Here we could speak at length about the following Muscovite period, about Ivan the Terrible and all the developments of the Russian education system that took place, but to make a long story short, let's draw our attention to a more recent period, in which the origins of secular, European-like Russian education were laid.
The most important figure in this context is undoubtedly Peter the Great. He was the first Tsar to mark the beginning of his reign by leaving Russia in order to study in Germany and Holland. When he returned, he put great emphasis on establishing modern education systems, as he had seen in those countries, in Russia. It's in this period that the Slavic Greek Latin Academy and Petersburg Academy of Sciences were founded. The former was the first university in Russia, and the latter was the forerunner of the current Russian Academy of Sciences. The most outstanding figure of Russian education in the 18th century is Mikhail Lomonosov. It is on his initiative that in 1755 Moscow State University was founded. To the present day, it's considered to be the best university in Russia and is ranked among the top universities worldwide. Currently, MSU consists of 600 buildings, housing 30 departments, with more than 30,000 students enrolled. MSU's rector is appointed by the President of Russia himself, after a few changes in law that were introduced in 2009. Before that, the rector used to be chosen by voting. This university is the alma mater of 11 Nobel laureates and many other famous people, such as Mikhail Gorbachev, a former president, Anton Chekhov, a playwright, Andrei Kolmogorov, a mathematician, and many others.
The Soviet period opens another very important page in the history of education in Russia. In 1918, Russia became the first country in the world that made its higher education free. It guaranteed not only total access to education for all citizens, but also post-education employment for all graduates. In spite of all the positive sides of education in the Soviet Union, it should be mentioned that the entire system was permeated with Soviet ideology, intolerant of any kind of views that contradicted Marxism teachings. Any theological education, for instance, was utterly suppressed. Vast Christian heritage was subject either to ridicule and misrepresentation or to oblivion.
Speaking about the way Soviet school system was organized, we come very close to its present state, because most characteristic features remain the same. Elementary schools were called the beginning level, in Russian, начальное образование. It consisted of 3 classes. Now it's the same. Secondary schools consist of additional 5 years and were called incomplete secondary education. In Russian, неполное среднее образование. Another 2 classes of school were called complete secondary education. In Russian, полное среднее образование. So it took Soviet pupils 10 years to complete their school education. Russia made substantial progress in reforming the over-centralized, rigid educational system that it inherited from the Soviet Union. The education modernization program has contributed substantially to this reform. The end of the communist system led to the extensive curriculum revision. A new paradigm was developed to guide education, and more attention went to humanities, arts, and social sciences. Today, the advocates of improving Russian education systems are divided into 2 camps. Some support the idea of building on the foundation of the Soviet education system. Others stand for embracing international innovations and best foreign practices.
If we try to schematize the whole system, it's going to look something like this. As you see, education in Russia is divided into 4 levels of education. The first level begins with preschool education, before the age of 6. This step isn't compulsory, but usually parents let their children attend kindergartens or other preschools in order to help them integrate into society. The next step is 11 years of school, after which children have to make their first conscious, life-changing decision. They should choose between technical schools, technikum, special colleges, college, or universities. And this is the third step of education. As you see, the scheme here is somewhat confused. It's related to the Bologna Process. This topic is yet to come. Successfully graduating from a university gives young people the opportunity to pursue the next and final available step of education, postgraduate studies, that are divided into 2 levels. First, young people become candidates of science, in Russian, kandidat nauk, which takes them at least 3 years, but usually more, and it's equivalent to PhD qualification. And then young scientists can pursue the second available step of postgraduate education, doctors of science, доктор наук in Russian. In the Western education system, it has no equivalent. Primary and secondary schools can be located in one and the same building or in different buildings that are adjacent to each other. It depends on a particular place. Concerning the number of pupils in class, it can be really very different. I once taught a class in a special Orthodox lyceum with 4 pupils. Really very few. But it's rather an exception. Usually there are something like 20 or 25 pupils in class in a regular school. Alongside regular secondary schools, there are lyceums and gymnasiums. The word lyceum shows that a school makes use of an innovative approach of education. It has a special program and a particular specialization in some area. The Chinese language, for instance, or mathematics, or history, or anything else. Gymnasium is a humanitarian school with a comprehensive program and the study of at least 2 foreign languages. To be granted the status of a lyceum or gymnasium, schools are expected to prove that they have highly qualified teachers, advanced programs, and adequate facilities. Among the first institutions to receive this status were schools with very intensive foreign language programs. Such schools had been established under Khrushchev, the 1960s, and gained popularity for producing almost bilingual graduates. The state also operates institutions which provide secondary education for the blind or partially sighted, deaf or partially hearing students, individuals with speech defects or other health problems.
In the last few years, numerous private schools were established. The authorization to grant nationally recognized certificates of the state format, is linked to the success in the state accreditation procedures. Certificates awarded by the non-accredited institutions of non-state format do not grant the right to be admitted to the higher education institutions. Such schools include technicums or polytechnicums. These are independent institutions that train middle-level technicians, level managers, shop foremen for industry, construction, agriculture and transport. Училища. These are schools that prepare specialists for non-production spheres, including pre-primary and primary teachers, nurses, circus performers and librarians. Colleges. They are secondary specialized institutions that can either be independent or function as a structural division of a university, institute or academy. In 2007, unified state examination was introduced in secondary schools. It has to be said that there is a lot of discussion going around the USA. On one hand, it simplifies the process of entering the university for people from small towns and villages. But on the other hand, its structure is far from being perfect. Sometimes there are mistakes in the examination papers. Also, there was a number of huge scandals caused by corruption. In 2013, there was a big problem because students from the eastern part of Russia shared their examination papers on internet, which led to the students from the other time zones of the country cheating. Unified state exam rules and structure are transforming nearly every year. Russian and mathematics are two compulsory subjects for both groups of students, those who attended 9 and older 11 years of school. The pupils are free to choose from the rest of the subjects, depending on the entry requirements of the selected universities.
Unlike the United States or Bologna Process model, Russian higher education was traditionally not divided into undergraduate, bachelor's and graduate, master's levels. Instead, higher education was usually undertaken in a single stage, typically 5 or 6 years in duration, which resulted in a specialist diploma. Specialist diplomas were perceived equal to Western master's qualification. A specialist graduate needed no further academic qualification to pursue a real-world career, with the exception of some branches of medical professions which required a postgraduate residency stage. Nowadays, Russia is still in the process of migrating from its traditional higher education model, incompatible with the existing Western academic degrees, to a modernized degree structure in line with the Bologna Process model. In October 2007, Russia enacted a law that replaces the traditional 5-year model of education with a 2-tiered approach. A 4-year bachelor's degree, Russian bakalavr, followed by a 2-year master's degree, Russian magistr.
The move has been vastly criticized, especially by those engaged in the teaching process, because reshaping the curriculum appeared to be a very difficult and tremendously painful step to take. Defenders of the Bologna process argue that the last years of the specialist program were formal and useless. Schedules were relaxed and undemanding, allowing students to work elsewhere. Others argued that the only reason why specialist program might seem undemanding is because students had to devote most of their time to finishing their diploma paper. This paper had to be done at a pretty high level, equal to a master's one if to compare it with the Bologna system. That's why the schedules were more relaxed.
The faculty and the department I teach at, German language faculty, theology department, resolved the problem of introducing a new system in the following way. The standard 5-year theology curriculum was almost without any reduction reshaped into the 4-year bachelor's period, so that current bachelors have to cover the same amount of knowledge specialists used to cover, but in an abridged amount of time. It resulted in increasingly challenging load. Students have to study 6 days a week, and it's not seldom that they have about 10 academic hours of practical classes, lectures or seminars a day. The master's program was started from scratch and developed by a number of renowned university professors into an entirely new education program, so that even some graduates with a specialist diploma who didn't formally need a master's degree decided to apply for it, and in the end were quite glad about having made that decision. And I was among those students. But speaking about the job market, there is a problem. Employers are generally unaware of the change. Standalone bachelor's diplomas may sometimes fail to be recognized as real university education. It renders the degree unnecessary and undesirable without further specialization. As a consequence, an absolute majority of students complete all 6 years of education, including master's curriculum. The positive side of that process is that it enhanced mobility among universities. For example, some bachelors who studied theology at Moscow State Linguistic University decided to continue their studies at St. Tikhon University, and vice versa. The 5-year specialist training was free for all students with high scores, and this tradition wasn't broken by introducing 2 education stages instead. The master's stage is also free for those students who get high scores during the entrance exams. So one can say that the shift doesn't generally force students to pay for what was free for the previous generations.
I think two systems are not really that different. However, there are a couple of things I'd like to point out. Russian kids normally have 6 classes a day. Classes are 45 minutes. Between every lesson there is a break, 10 to 15 minutes. In the middle of the day there is a big break, around 30 minutes. It's not common in Russia not to have some free time between the teaching periods. There is no registration or tutor time before the lessons start. School uniforms are much less popular in Russia, even though there exists a standard of a pupil's appearance. Russian pupils do not have a period of studying when they only do those disciplines that they want to do. Years 10 and 11 are equivalent to British A-levels, but even if the pupils only need to take 3 exams, they still have to attend all the classes with no regard to their university or faculty choice. According to my personal experience, cheating is much more common in Russia, even if there is a danger of being disqualified. Russian education is much more affordable. Not only can you get a secondary education for free, there are also quite a lot of chances to get into university without paying. But even if one did not manage to do so, the prices are still much lower than in Europe or America. The cost varies from 13,000 rubles, which is around 200 euros, to 290,000 rubles, which is around 4,700 euros a year. There is less connection between the university and the social life of a student than in the UK. Clubs and societies barely exist. There is also less emphasis on students' personal issues. Not many universities have psychological help services or career advice services. It is also uncommon to have a personal tutor who guides you through your whole degree. Attending is controlled less strictly. It is possible to graduate with 0 attendance if the final exam is passed. There is no optional choice of modules. There are also much more disciplines that are related to the chosen degree very vaguely or not related at all. For example, all Russian students have to do PE classes. Many exams are passed in a form of verbal conversation with the professor. Therefore, there is less anonymity in marking.
That's it. We hope we clarified the system and how it works, and here are some questions for you.